the totem's memory. The forest was ancient, its dark oak canopy so dense it starved the world below of light. Here, shadows grew like weeds, and the air, thick with the scent of old wood and decay, was a constant, heavy presence. Through this gloom moved a figure named Kai, his iron armor scuffed and dented, a map clutched in one hand and a diamond sword in the other. He was no stranger to the world's forgotten corners. He had delved into ravines that scarred the earth, built towers that touched the clouds, and sailed across oceans that never seemed to end. But he had never challenged a Woodland Mansion. The structure rose from the trees like a monstrous rotting tooth. Its windows were dark, vacant eyes staring out into the twilight. Kai took a steadying breath, the kind one takes before diving into deep water, and pushed open the heavy oak doors. Inside, the silence was a living thing. It was broken only by the drip of unseen water and the frantic thumping of his own heart. He moved through labyrinthine corridors, his torch casting dancing, nervous shadows on the walls. He was a ghost in a house of monsters. A sudden guttural roar from an adjoining room sent a Vindicator charging, its iron axe raised high. The clash of diamond on iron echoed through the halls, a sharp and violent song. Kai was faster, his movements a blur of practiced efficiency. The Vindicator fell, dissolving into a puff of smoke. He fought his way deeper, past rooms filled with strange sculptures of wool and chambers where vexes swarmed like angry hornets. Finally, he found him, the Evoker. It stood in a grand library, arms raised, chanting its strange, mystical tune. Fangs of earth erupted from the floorboards, snapping at Kai's heels. He dodged and weaved, closing the distance as the air crackled with arcane energy. With a final, desperate lunge, he struck. The Evoker let out a sound like shattering glass and vanished, leaving behind only one thing on the patterned carpet: a small, golden effigy with emerald eyes, a Totem of Undying. Kai snatched it up, its cool, smooth surface a stark contrast to his own ragged breathing. His pride secured, he turned to leave, but his victory had made him careless. He didn't hear the soft, insistent hiss from the darkened doorway behind him. The explosion threw him backward, a deafening roar that ripped through the mansion's quiet halls. He was flung through a large glass-paned window, shattering it into 1,000 glittering shards. For a moment he was suspended in the air, the dark forest sprawling beneath him, a 300-foot drop to the unforgiving ground. Then, gravity remembered him. He fell. The wind screamed in his ears. The world became a green and brown blur. He closed his eyes, bracing for the inevitable end. But it never came. Instead of a final, crushing impact, he felt a strange warmth spread through his chest. A brilliant green light erupted from his hand, swirling around him in a protective embrace. The Totem of Undying. It pulsed with life, pouring its magic into him, knitting his broken body back together and gently lowering him to the forest floor. He landed softly, not with a crack, but with a whisper. The totem in his hand, its magic spent, crumbled into fine golden dust. He had survived, but something was wrong. Back in the safety of his own home, a cozy, torch-lit cavern carved into the side of a mountain, Kai began to notice the changes. They were small at first. While smelting a fresh batch of iron, he found his hand reaching for a block of gold, an instinct he couldn't explain. He stared at the 2 ingots, feeling a strange, unfamiliar desire to combine them, to create something powerful and ornate. He shook his head, dismissing it as a lingering effect of his near-death experience. A few days later, while expanding his storage room, his pickaxe struck a vein of lapis lazuli. The usual thrill of discovery was absent. In its place was a cold, calculating satisfaction, a feeling of harnessing power, not finding treasure. He looked down at his hands, which felt both like his own and like a stranger's. The visions began soon after. They were fleeting flashes, like lightning in a distant storm. While tending his wheat farm, he saw not rows of crops, but legions of armored figures standing at attention. He looked at a friendly village in the valley below, and felt a surge of something that wasn't admiration, but ambition. He saw the villagers not as traders, but as subjects. He saw their neat little homes not as dwellings, but as assets to be controlled. These weren't his thoughts. They were echoes, fragments of a life he had never lived, belonging to the one who had once held the totem. Driven by a compulsion he didn't understand, Kai began to build. His hands moved with a skill that surpassed his own, carving intricate patterns into stone he'd never imagined. He built soaring archways and impossibly complex redstone circuits, following blueprints that existed only in the ghost memories flickering behind his eyes. He felt the phantom pride of their creator, a master architect whose name was lost to time. But with the pride came other feelings, a profound loneliness, a gnawing hunger for power, a deep, chilling resentment for the simple, unchanging cycle of the world. The memories grew stronger, more coherent. He saw a fortress, not of cobblestone and wood, but of obsidian, and crying obsidian, a structure that wept purple tears under a starless sky. He saw a figure, cloaked and powerful, standing before a swirling nether portal, their face always obscured by shadow. He felt their burning desire to conquer, to master not just the overworld, but all dimensions. The totem's previous owner was no hero. They were a tyrant, a sorcerer, a builder of terrible and beautiful things, and their final memory was a warning. One night, Kai woke in a cold sweat, the vision still searing his mind. He saw the fortress again, but this time, it was under siege, not by players or pillagers, but by the world itself. He saw piglins inexplicably unified, pouring through the portal, their golden swords a wave of shimmering death. He saw endermen, their purple eyes burning with a cold fury, teleporting through the fortress walls, dismantling it block by block. He felt the owner's shock, their arrogance turning to panic. They had pushed the world too far, and the world was pushing back. The final fragmented memory was of the owner, cornered and defeated, clutching the Totem of Undying. They weren't looking at the encroaching horde. They were looking at a single, unassuming block on the floor, a respawn anchor, glowing with a strange, unstable energy. They had been experimenting, trying to bend the laws of life and death, trying to create a permanent foothold in the Nether. The memory ended with a blinding flash of purple light, a soundless scream, and an overwhelming feeling of being torn apart. The totem had saved Kai from a fall. It had failed to save its master from their own hubris. When the vision faded, Kai knew what he had to do. The memories were not just a curse, they were a map. He gathered his best gear, netherite armor, a bow enchanted with infinity, and a pouch full of ender pearls. He followed the mental breadcrumbs left by the long-dead sorcerer through treacherous nether wastes and across seas of bubbling lava. He found it, tucked away in a warped forest biome, the obsidian fortress, now a crumbling ruin. It was silent, haunted only by the whispers of the wind. Purple vines crept over its weeping walls, and the grand portal at its heart was extinguished. He walked its empty halls, a strange sense of déjà vu washing over him. He saw the throne room where the sorcerer had planned their conquests, the alchemy labs where they had twisted potions into terrible weapons, and finally, the chamber from his vision. There, in the center of the room, was the shattered remnant of the respawn anchor, surrounded by a crater of scorched netherrack. The air still hummed with a faint residual magic. This was where the totem's memory had been forged, in the last desperate moments of a life consumed by power. As Kai stood in the ruins, he felt the phantom presence that had haunted him begin to fade. The borrowed ambition, the cold pride, the crushing loneliness. they all receded, leaving only his own thoughts, his own feelings. The memory had led him home. He was free. But he was not unchanged. He still possessed the knowledge, the architectural genius of the one who came before. He looked around at the magnificent ruins, at the testament to a fallen tyrant. He could leave it to crumble, a forgotten monument to a forgotten age, or he could rebuild. He pulled out his pickaxe. The stone felt familiar and right in his hands. He would not rebuild a fortress of conquest. He would build something new, a sanctuary, a bridge between worlds, not to rule them, but to understand them. He would use the knowledge of a dark past to build a brighter future. The totem had given him a second life. Now, he would give its memory a second chance. He raised his pickaxe and struck the first block, and in the echoing silence of the Nether, he began to build.